And that's what a lot of people think marketing is, right? It's like, okay, it's Facebook ads, it's Google SEO, and what you do is completely different, although those can be downstream of what you do. You help people cast this vision for like, hey, this is why we exist, and this is how we want the world to be different because we exist, and that's what we call our category. We've cited some examples from tech, but I wanted to bring you on here to talk about some examples that I think I have identified through previous guests on this show. I want to talk about some of those to try to make this real and get the wheels turning for everyone listening of like, no matter what you're in, you can be engaging in category design. And yeah, let's kind of take a look at that, and then maybe that will also flesh out some of the details of what category design looks like in practice. And the first one I wanted to go to was from episode 306. That was back in April of 2022. I had Zack Smith from StockCropper on the show. And to me, he came to mind as someone who I thought was a great podcast guest because he really brought a unique point of view that you don't hear from most people in agriculture, which made me think he's really onto something with category design. But just for those of you listening, he has the self-propelled pen, for lack of a better term, of animals that goes through wide row corn to eat cover crops and then obviously deposit manure, so that rather than farming just corn, in this case, you're actually farming both corn and livestock integrated. I'm curious, is that an example of what we're talking about here?
I love Zach's example. I love their point of view. It's different than everything else that's on the market. That being said, it fits in with the broader category around that. You look at Paul Grieve with Pasture Bird, a lot of the things that are going on in that space where you have those mobile I know it's a little bit different, but they have a similar take on that market. One of the things that I really loved is that they came up with stock cropping, right? They named it because what we know is that the difference between livestock and pets is that pets have names and livestock don't. And we have a name for our cow and all that kind of stuff. I know that's not always true, but it is kind of the distinct difference between what you're going to eat next fall and what it is that you're going to be keeping around for the next 15 years, right? So giving something a name imbues it with value. And so I loved the stock cropping name. They have that farmonious movement. The one piece of advice that I would give to them is tell me more about what that is and bring the point of view up a little bit. Because one of the things that happens a lot of times is we get stuck in this idea of competition so much that even when we create something new, something like stock cropping, and give it a name and do all those right things, one of the things that unfortunately happens is we don't lead with that. We lead with trying to communicate what it is and trying to lead with nuance. And so nuance never sold anything. So be distinct from the get-go. So when I look at their website, one of the things that I wanted to know more about right away was like, what is their point of view? Like, give me a Declaration of Independence from the get-go about like, what put it in a sentence. What is it that makes you different? What is it that makes you unique? Throw that to the top. What is the farmonious movement? Because like, I want to know more about it because like I said before, I'm probably their target market actually. And so I want to understand what it is that they're doing. I love everything that they have. I think that bringing it a little bit more to the forefront would be a huge opportunity for them. And then defining that larger category. What is it that makes a farm part of the farmonious movement? Right. What is it that makes them part of the stock cropping movement? What are the, because one of the things that we have to do when we're doing this category design thing is we have to define the limits on each side of what it is that we're doing. Like, it's not this and it's not this, it's actually this, right? So it's people like us believe things like this. Like who, like you said earlier, that's the Seth Godin quote. It's like we have to narrowly define what it is that we're doing and even more critically define what it is that we're not doing, right? So there's lots of positive ways to do that. You don't have to attack somebody to do that, though that is an opportunity. We mentioned Salesforce before. You can call out the incumbent for where they're, take them on at the head. But you can look at what makes you unique, what makes you different, and lead with that as opposed to forcing people to do a lot of work to understand what makes you unique. That would be my one piece of advice, again, unsolicited advice to them. But I think I love their point of view. It's very different. It's very unique. So I thank you for grabbing that clip because I think it was exactly what it is that we're talking about from a point of view perspective.
Yeah. And I love the part of thinking about a future in which farms exist to serve their local economies, local like rural economies as well, where it's like, okay, rather than just growing more so we could ship it somewhere else, we're going to grow higher value meat, or eggs or milk or whatever the case may be to serve our local economy. To me, that's totally different from every other narrative you hear out there in ag tech. It's like, feed the world, right? And he's like, let's just maybe stop stripping our rural economies of all the talent and resources.
Because then you have brain drain running out, right? You have, the brain drain comes out of those rural economies. And, we see it here in southern Minnesota. Your kids go off, whether it's to Minneapolis or they go to St. Louis or wherever it is that they go to these other bigger cities, and they leave the rural economies where if there was an opportunity for them to stay there, if there was an opportunity for them that was presented to them to build a life in rural America, I think that's a huge benefit. And so we don't have to go down that path because that's more of like an ideological path. It is important to talk about ideology because it's important for them to define what it is that people believe.
Right.
If you want to make Christians, you have to sell Bibles. That's the product. That's right. But you also have to create churches and build community in which those people can live, those people can exist, and continue to evangelize.